there might be a struggle with the term forget because we attribute forgetting to the thought of out of sight, out of mind. It's no longer in my mind. It's no longer something that I'm thinking about. It's no longer something that crosses my mind and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember. There seems to be maybe a potential to possibly shift that. So maybe it's not necessarily forgive and forget as much as it could be just forgiving and considering. I believe there was some level of it wasn't war, but it was some attack possibly that took place.
Hmm.
And an individual, it was overseas, an individual and his daughter, after the bombs had taken place in this city. I wish I had the whole context, but I'm gonna just share these quotes because I think it's fitting here. There was a bomb that took place, a lot of damage to the city, to the people. In the process, his daughter died. Okay. So they were both really pinned down by a wall that fell on them, and they were there for hours. And it was really rough. He was literally looking at his daughter. They were looking at one another due to these bombers' attacks. He's holding her hand, and he witnessed her take her last breath. He witnessed his daughter go through that excruciating pain. And he remembers her saying, and it's going to come up in the quote, I love you so much, daddy. And she dies. He makes it out. He's somewhat aware of the events that have transpired after coming out of this in-depth injury. Here are some things that he says in this quote. This came out of William Uri, The Third Side, Why We Fight and How We Can Stop. He includes this in this book. No one who heard Gordon Wilson will ever forget, which is his name, will ever forget what he said in that interview. His grace towered over the miserable justification of the bombers. Speaking from his hospital bed, Wilson described his last conversation with his daughter. She held my hand tightly and gripped me as hard as she could. She said, Daddy, I love you very much. Those were her exact words to me, and those were the last words I ever heard her say. To the astonishment of listeners, Wilson went on to add, but I will bear no ill will. I will bear no grudge. Bitter talk is not going to bring her back to life. I will pray tonight and every night for the men who did this, that God will forgive them. No words in more than 25 years of violence in Northern Ireland, which is where this happened, had such a powerful emotional impact. And then there's some more words from a book called Love in Chaos by Mary McLeese. I believe it's a McAleese,
Hmm.
something like that. And these are the words that she's referring from Gordon Wilson in this. Gordon's words shamed us all and caught us off guard. They sounded so different from what we expected and what we had all become used to. They brought a stillness with them. They carried a sense of the transcendent into a place that had become so ugly we could hardly bear to watch. But Gordon had his detractors, and unbelievably, he even received bags of hate mail. How dare you forgive? People demanded. What kind of father are you who can forgive your daughter's killers? It was as if Gordon had spoken those words of forgiveness for the first time in human history, as if Christ had never uttered the words, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. One outspoken critic who was a Christian said to me about Gordon Wilson, surely the poor man must have been in shock, as if offering love and forgiveness is a sign of mental weakness instead of spiritual strength. So I read that because my question that obviously I wouldn't know from his perspective, but it just seems hard to kind of wrap your mind around this aspect of something so crucial, so heartbreaking, so defeating in that space to get to a place where you're wrapping your mind around understanding the aspect of forgetting. Now I get where you're coming from. Where it's not a feeling. I'm just operating in obedience, understanding the level of atonement and forgiveness and the enrichedness that embodies that not only we have the opportunity to receive, but others who harmed us have the opportunity to receive. And it's him. He's the prize that he's going to give me the strength that I'm trading that purpose for injury. I completely get that. How would you express such to somebody who is trying to understand that same concept, but is maybe stuck on the aspect of, but it's something that I remember?
I believe that we should understand who we're talking to and when we're talking to them and what the circumstance is. And especially, I think that if we're talking to somebody who's a new believer or maybe even an unbeliever, and we're trying to win them over, that in that moment, first and foremost, we would first try to comfort them for their loss and their difficulty and their challenge, right? And then we would want to introduce them to the one who's forgiven everybody. And then we would want to lead them down a pathway of understanding the extent of the atonement. Now, if we're talking to somebody who is a believer, we would ultimately simply point them back to that, depending on their level of understanding, again, of the extent of the atonement, of what was done for them, and how they handle difficulty and pressure. It just, listen, some people walk through, listen, I've done so many funerals. I've watched people fall out on the floor, cry, scream, kick, can't even get out the car, can't get in the car, watch people go into the ground and they fall out. And I watch other people stand there, smile, hug other people, love on other people, comfort other people. And it might have been someone who was closer to them than the person who actually is doing all of the, movement and different things along those lines. Everybody handles it differently, but we still ultimately have to get to a place of truth. But sometimes we have to know the words that we need to use to be able to share it with somebody. So I thought that's actually very good, to be honest with you. I think knowing those words and bringing people to those places and sharing that stuff with them is great. But I will say this: Christians oftentimes are always looking for new definitions to try to change what God has asked us to do. And we need to be willing to sit in some of the difficulties of the things that God has asked us to do. It's not comfortable to forgive. Those two things, those two stories you just read, and think about the acts of the people that are around them. Has this brother lost his mind? You have lost your mind. You're gonna forgive these people? I mean, what kind of father are you? He's a father after God's own heart. And I'm not sitting here telling you that would be an easy thing for me, but clearly he understands something. His level of relationship with God is that if watch this, could God have stopped it? Perhaps, maybe, yes. So if God allowed it, now that's a whole nother thing I have to wrestle with, right? So I either believe that God is sovereign, he knows what he's doing above what I think, or I believe that God somehow just didn't care for me and my circumstance and allowed something that difficult to happen, and so I can't trust him anymore. Which one are we going to wrestle with? There's that tension in life again. That tension that comes in is which one? Where do we trust God? And then where do we follow through with it? I'm not even sitting here trying to tell you that's easy. I'm trying to tell you that it's one of the things that God says that we should do. What does it tell us? It says, forgive as your heavenly Father has forgiven you. Right? We gotta be willing, man, to do that. But if you do not forgive men their trespasses, your heavenly Father will not forgive you. That's Matthew 6:14. So we have to ask ourselves, where do we want to stand with that? God says, forgive as I have forgiven you. But if you don't forgive, then I won't forgive you. But then he tells us, you've been forgiven. Your heavenly Father has forgiven you of what? Of so much. Yeah. So the question becomes is, do we have a right to hold back unforgiveness? But this is why I was dealing with the forget part, because we have a hard time with forgiveness. But can I forget it? In essence, what is forgetting, Grape? Is it like I forgot my keys? Oh, I ran out of the house and going to the store, forgot my keys. Is it that kind of forgetting?
I would say in this context, no.
Right.
No.
Or is it, I saw my friend Kevin, who I know told lies on me, separated our entire friend group. I just heard last week that he's still lying on me, but I see him out at the grocery store.
Forgetting is moving on.
Forgetting is moving.
It's not. Yeah. It's not an out of sight, out of mind. Oh, I forgot my I forgot my keys. I forgot my phone. I forgot that even happened to me. It's more so I'm moving on.
I'm not going to allow you
There it
to
is.
affect my future
Boom.
and what God has for me. So it happened, but I'm not holding on to it. So I can see you. I can even speak to you, but I'm going to keep moving, Paul. So I forget those things.
Which are behind me. Yeah, that's good. That's it. No, that's it. That's what I was wanting to get at there. It's a forgetting, not in a context of, oh, I didn't think about that
I
till you
don't
just brought it up.
remember. It's not that I don't remember.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
right.
just that I'm not allowing it to impact
Where I'm headed.
where I'm headed.
That right there. See, that is how I think that ought to be shared. And just like that, this video has come to the end, but don't worry, your boys got more. Subscribe, like this video, share it with a friend, and definitely check out the channel to learn more about how you can build healthy, happy, whole, and biblical relationships. I'll see you over there. Peace.